Hi, Mrs. Maltreader. This is the Chemistry of Life Notes 1B. So yesterday we talked about elements, and today we're going to start it off with compounds. So compounds are substances that have two or more different elements in them. So for instance, H2, which is two hydrogens, would not be a compound, but salt, NaCl, would be a compound. And for table salt, it happens to be in a ratio of 1:1, one sodium to one chlorine. So it's kind of cool what happens when we get compounds because they usually have what are called emergent properties. This means that we get something else to come out of it when we put the two things together. Okay, so I like to think about it. If you have a bicycle, you have the wheel that does one thing, you have the pedals that does another thing. But if you put those both together, then you can get movement. Okay, so then we're going to talk about what is going on in the outside of the atom, because that's kind of what we're concerned about for biology and for AP biology. So in or around the nucleus are these shells where these electrons just orbit and move very rapidly. Okay. Now, those shells that are around the nucleus are in order of increasing energy levels. So the further out you get, the more energy is in those. Okay. And remember, energy is the ability to cause change. All matter has potential energy, or that energy that's stored up and ready to use. Okay. So that outermost shell is what is going to usually tell us how this element is going to behave. And we call that outermost shell and the electrons in it the valence electrons. Okay. If elements have a similar number of valence electrons, they will have similar behaviors. Okay, so we're looking at sodium here. Sodium, if we counted all of the dots, you've got 1, 2 there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay, so 11. So we've got 2 in this shell. Then this shell has 6 and it's happy. This one only has 1 and it's not so happy. It wants to have more in that one. So it's going to very easily combine with chlorine that also is missing 1. Or, excuse me, is missing 1. So sodium is missing a bunch. Chlorine is only missing 1. Another example. So carbon. Carbon is the 6th element. Okay. The first shell gets filled with 2 electrons. Hydrogen is the first element, so its first shell only gets 1 electron and it wants a second one. So carbon is a great way for hydrogen, or a great element for hydrogen to combine with, because carbon can accept 4 hydrogens because it's looking for 4. I will explain some more further. Okay, so when we're looking at those electrons, the first thing we have to do is know, okay, what element is it? So for instance, hydrogen, which would be up here, is the first element. Its number is 1, which means it has 1 electron. Okay, so that first shell that surrounds it, here's hydrogen here, it has 1 shell surrounding the nucleus. That 1 shell wants 2 electrons because we have 1, the first shell wants 2. Okay, so it only has 1, just like this. So all of these in this row here would have 1, or column, sorry. All of these elements would have 2 valence electrons, so outer electrons. So we're thinking about the outer shells again. So hydrogen has 1, but it wants 2. It's not happy. Okay. These guys over here have 8. They're full. They're happy. Helium. Helium is here. Helium is our second element. Helium has 2 electrons. Oh, look, it has 2. It completes it. It's happy. So we tend to call these over here the noble gases. Okay, so if they are happy and filled, they don't like to combine with things too well. It's when they're kind of missing and lacking something that they want to combine. Okay, so let's look at oxygen. Okay, oxygen is going to have 6 outer electrons. It has 8 because it's the 8th element. Okay, so that first shell, which is not shown here, is filled. Okay, so 8 minus 2 is 6. So now we've got 6 valence electrons. Okay, so oxygen has a pair here, and then it's got 2 little lonely guys. They want to be filled. So its outer shell wants to have 8, and it can't. So here, 6 plus 2 is 8, right? And it wants to have 8, and it doesn't. So what better element for it to combine with than 2 hydrogens, and we get H2O, or water. We'll practice with this some, and as we go through and need it more, I'll explain more in class. But please write down your questions, and we'll go through as much as we can. Okay, then the last little piece that I want to leave with for this session is just that chemical bonds are created when electrons are either shared or transferred to complete those shells. So I've been talking a lot about how hydrogen has one and it wants another one. Okay, so it's either going to share, so those 2 elements are going to combine together and they'll share those electrons. So hydrogen will share its electron with oxygen or carbon. Okay, or that other element is going to grab those electrons or transfer. So it would take it from hydrogen and keep it to itself. And those are different kinds of bonding, and that's what we're going to talk about in part C.